Destiny versus D'Souza fight. All right. Shout out Street Fighter. I'm gonna piss someone off by saying that. Okay, let's get into it.
Realities. I assume what you're saying is that let's get into it.
Okay, so I don't know how much you know about me, but I've been kind of like a YouTube political commentator, influencer guy for maybe about 10 years. I followed with great detail a lot of the political, factual, legal, whatever stuff going on with both sides, especially over the past 5 or 6 years. And one of the most kind of troubling things that I've seen develop is we are totally and completely separated in terms of factual reality, in terms of where like the left is living and where MAGA is living. And I mean, my argument is that I would say the conservatives and MAGA, and even people in positions like yours have contributed really heavily towards that like deliberate muddying of the record so that people aren't aware of what's actually happening in this country. And I guess like the first event, I think I would kind of like to center on is I'm curious what your understanding is of like the Mar-a-Lago documents case for the classified information that Trump took from the White House and refused to return.
I'm happy to get into it, but before we do, if I can explore the idea you just mentioned a moment ago about alternative realities. I assume what you're saying is that the left lives in a certain type of a bubble, but it's a reality-based bubble. The right lives in a bubble that is fake and not reality-based. And so according to you, one half of the country is essentially deluded, and the other half of the country is sane. See, I think this is a very poor way to try to conceptualize politics in general.
I would say it's like there's 10% that know the realities of the situation, but they're manipulating the populace for their own individual gain. And then out of the MAGA populace, so 10% is evil and manipulative. 70% is deluded, and then 20% is kind of just along for the ride, and they don't live in a false reality. They'll just do whatever MAGA says. So actually, let me say 10, 50, 40. 10, 50, 40.
The reason it's a poor way is that if you look at any political divide, particularly the really severe political divides, if we go back, for example, to 1860, you could take the view that, which was the view of the South, Lincoln was a moron, Lincoln is a dictator, Lincoln's an idiot, and the Republicans in the North make no sense at all. Or you could take the opposite view, that everyone in the South is a moron, they're living in a bubble, they don't understand reality, and therefore one side is completely right and the other side is completely wrong. To me, the reason this is a very poor way to comprehend reality is that it requires you ultimately to believe that virtually one half of the entire country lives in delusion. Democracy would make no sense if this were truly the case.
You can engage with people who live in delusion, right? I do think, yes, the South being deluded and thinking that black people were 3/5 a person was delusional. That's just me, though.
In reality, the complex thing to do, particularly when there is a divide, and I think this is what we have to work toward, and it'd be really interesting if we did that in this debate, is if I can advance a theory about Trump that explains not just the 75 million people or so who voted for him, but also the 71 million or so who voted against him. And if I can account for both, and similarly, I would demand of you the same thing. You advance a theory that is a little more sophisticated than simply saying everybody who votes for Trump is a dummy, or they're listening to other dummies and swallowing their dumb stuff. This does not do justice to our fellow citizens. So I'm just objecting to this framing of reality. We can discuss specific aspects of reality, and I'm happy to start where you want, and then I'll take you where I want to go. But I'd like you to comment, first of all, if you agree with me that each of us needs to advance tonight a theory that is good enough, not just to feed the prejudices of the people on our own side, which may be the majority of the audience here, but genuinely accounts for the other side.
So I would agree, but I would disagree that a genuine accounting for both sides requires you to admit, or it requires you to concede that both sides have a similar factual foundation. Sometimes when you go to the hospital, sometimes you get diagnosed with a really bad disease. Sometimes the prognosis is it's untreatable. I would be uncomfortable if the doctor told me, well, we're looking at two different diagnoses, but this one is really bad, so we're just going to favor the other one instead. Unfortunately, that's not how the real world works. It might be that at times in our history, there are certain sides of our country that are deluded. Now, you used the word dummy. I would say they're not stupid. I think that the capacity for even an ordinary person that, you know, a pretentious liberal or some online guy might say, oh, this guy is an idiot. They're not stupid. Like, people have a tremendous capacity for a ton of information. But I would argue that there has been an entire conservative media apparatus that has been aimed at engaging in the delusion of these people for the purposes of trying to make the unappealing appealing or the indefensible defensible. And that's the thing that I'm kind of attacking. Like, is half the country deluded? I would say right now, to a large extent, yes, but that's not because they're stupid, and it's not by accident, it's by design. And I think part of what I would really like to dig into is part of it is not even being able to agree fundamentally on like, things that are actually true. You brought up that north-south divide. The difference that you were talking about there was one of legal perspective, was a conceptual perspective difference on, do states have the right to secede from the union? You know, how much right does an individual state have over the federal government? That same debate taking place today, you know, it would be somebody saying in the South, oh, we don't even have slaves. All of the people here live equally. And, you know, people in the North saying, you know, in the South, they literally torture these people and throw them in the river for fun, and they don't even use them for work, right? That's the level of, assuming both sides are being deluded, right? That's the level of delusion that we're on today. We don't have disagreements in law or disagreements in concept or idea or narrative about the country. It's like very foundational disagreements on things that we shouldn't have that much of a factual disagreement on.
Well, so I take it that what you're saying is that in the Civil War, there were genuinely intelligent people on both sides, and they actually disagreed about what kind of America they wanted. They disagreed about their economic interests. They disagreed on constitutional interpretation. They disagreed about whether they wanted to retain the status quo or go into a new type of America. Now, I would argue that we're having very much that exact same kind of fundamental debate right now. Let's just take, for example, the phrase, make America great again. Bit of a cliche.
I wish we were. I wish we could fight on ideological, conceptual grounds where they believe in a certain concept will produce better results. But we don't. We live in a factually inaccurate grounds of conspiracy theorist brain individuals who believe in narratives over substance. So that's just not the world we live in today. I'm sure Dusty's going to go into examples, Mar-a-Lago being the first one. But yeah.
Right. But I would say that the implicit in that is a big idea. That there was an America that we lived in. You could say it's the America of the 50s, the America of 1965, the America of 1980. You can kind of pick your own preferred date. But the things worked better in this country before, in the past. We have messed up. We have become more polarized, more hateful, more violent.
Things worked better in the past? What? For who?
Our goals have begun to pull further apart. I would argue that in the Reagan years, for example, the debates were not so much about goals, but about means. We all agreed that America, if you were to take a poll in 1980 or the early 80s and ask Americans, do you think America should be strong, prosperous? Do you think we should have law and order? Do you think America should be an example to the world? Do you think that most people, if given the chance, who want to come here? You got yes, 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 and yes. Now, you might disagree. If we create a prosperous pie, how should that pie be shared? The argument was about that. But on the need for prosperity, on the principles of the founding, no disagreement about goals. Now, we are in America where we can't agree about goals. And I would say that one half of the country, my half, Trump's half, we think that there's a better America we want to go back to. You don't. You want to take us into some progressive utopia. So right there, this is hardly a disagreement about facts. I mean, I guess it could be a disagreement about facts if you want to argue the facts of what life was like in 1980 or what the GDP was. I'm happy to discuss that.
Yeah, so what was the life like for Americans? Not just white Americans, all Americans. What was it like? Tell me, please. I'd love to know what this version of America would do for someone like me. Unless someone like me and someone like you don't matter.
But I guess what I'm really saying
Let's
is it
capitulate
is a
to our white
conflict of
overlords.
visions. we want a society in which immigrants come to assimilate. We want a society in which affirming your identity takes a subordinate role to our identity as Americans. We want a society in which free markets are the engine to prosperity. We want a society in which we recognize that the world is made up of very dangerous people, and sometimes you have to smash in a few heads in order to protect your own interests. We want to live in a society where there's the rule of law, and if you come here illegally, there's every right to send you home. There's no such thing as a good lawbreaker or a bad lawbreaker any more than there's such a thing as good discrimination and bad discrimination. So these...
Unless you're Donald Trump, then you can break the law and then pretend that that law doesn't exist. You know? And we only want to break heads on people that we don't like, you know. Russia could do whatever, it keep on doing what it's doing, Israel keep doing what it's doing. We can try to overtake the Capitol, we can be corrupt, we can do all that, get pardoned, get let free, get negotiated with if you're a country trying to take over another country, as long as it hits our needs. Only that matters. So yeah, give me a break.
I've just articulated several, and I could keep going, principles. This has nothing to do with whether Trump had a bag of documents in Mar-a-Lago. It is a conflict of visions, and it seems to me that you are denying that. Either that or you just agree right now that all the principles I've articulated are yours as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would say exactly that. The issue that I have with the more abstract, high-level conceptual conversations is that everybody agrees with these things. That
you do?
People should, yeah, of course, people should be here relatively, legally as far as you can be. People should be here
As far as you can be. What is it? This is kind of like saying I favor law breaking. I don't favor law breaking unless it's...
Sure, I say as far as it can be because some immigration stuff is hazy. So for instance, sometimes conservatives seem like they're okay with asylum seekers, like they suddenly are with South Africans who are white. Other times they seem like they don't believe in asylum seeking at all. So I'm cutting out a little bit of on the edge here for presidential things like TPS, temporary protected status, things like DACA. For the most part, broadly speaking, I largely agree that everybody should be here in as legal process as possible. I think that people should, as far as they can, try not to break any laws. People get speeding tickets. Obviously, you shouldn't be shot for this. But broadly speaking, everything you say, everybody agrees with. But the issue is that when we have these high-level conceptual disagreements, say, for instance, we should have a president who doesn't commit crimes, and then we have a president who has clearly committed crimes, and one side sees that very plainly, and the other side screams lawfare. That's not true. There is a factual distinction there. That's not a difference of ideology or a difference of vision. It's a difference of understanding factually of what's in the record. And the unfortunate thing is we're not talking about complicated physics or chemistry or biology. It's very simple facts. If you can read a simple indictment, you can see how things are laid out. And it should be a thing that 95% of the population can grasp and understand. Like, for instance, that Donald Trump took documents from the White House that he didn't have authorization to keep. He showed them to multiple people at Mar-a-Lago. He refused to cooperate first with the National Archives and Records Administration and then with the FBI. And then eventually his home was raided. Some documents were never recovered. The whole time he was in the complete and total wrong in multiple levels, but the right refused to acknowledge this, screamed lawfare over and over again. And then we push them on things like, don't you think it's good to have like a rule of law? They appeal to these high-level concepts like, well, freedom and the past was good and all this. And it's like, well, but if we can't talk about any particular instances of anything happening, it's a pointless conversation.
Well, I find that this habit is hardly confined to the right. I'm something of an expert on the 2020 election, and I've given talks about it. And every time I talk about it, someone goes,
yeah, you've been completely debunked and your entire documentary is full of shit. Yes, we understand.
well, there clearly is nothing wrong in the 2020 election because there were 50 cases where these things were adjudicated. Now, there's not a single case in which the actual allegations of fraud were adjudicated. On all kinds of procedural obstacles or issues of standing, these cases were dismissed. You should have brought the case before the election. You had to do that. Obviously, the fraud was not obvious then. If you brought it after the election, it's moot. Or this is brought at the state level. It needs to be at the federal level. And so the procedural adjudication is considered adequate to establish the veracity or the validity of the 2020 election.
Just as a quick thing.
I'll just finish my point and you can jump
we can
in.
do the 2020 election. So do you concede on the whole Mar-a-Lago thing that Trump was retaining documents and then we can move to the 2020 election?
We haven't addressed Mar-a-Lago. I'm setting up the intellectual groundwork by saying that on the 2020 election.
So you're yapping and not staying on the point and just filibustering around a bunch of different ideas. One point at a time, my boy. One point at a time. You know
Statements are made that are accepted as gospel by the left. Let's take a simple one that was repeated ad nauseum. The 2020 election was the safest, most secure election in U.S. history. To which I ask,
nobody fucking says that. You lying, you disingenuous piece of shit. Nobody says that. Nobody on the left has ever said that fucking shit. Nobody. You're just making shit up because you've been completely clowned on this whole election stuff. Nobody says that.
where is the evidence that there was less fraud in 2020 than in 2016, 2012, 2008, 2004. Where is that demonstration? Who has actually done a comparative evaluation of the amount of
Nobody makes that claim, you fucking disingenuous piece of shit. Nobody makes that claim.
fraud in recent, forget about old elections, and shown that there was less in 2020? The answer is not only has this never been demonstrated, it has never been attempted. And
Because
so
nobody
an
has
utterly
said that.
idiotic statement,
You're making
almost
shit up.
preposterous on its face. We know that this election we just
How about you make a claim that the people on the left actually make? How about you do that? You know, it could be about COVID, it could be about climate change. Like, give us an actual claim that the people on the left made. Not your made up delusion. Right? Jesus.
had, and we're proclaiming it to be the safest ever, with zero empirical evidence produced to support that. And yet, the entire left, to my knowledge, without exception, went along, nodded its head, accepted this as true, became very scornful of any attempts to show the contrary. So, doesn't this show
Well, because you had
factual
no
dogmatism on the left that is just as corrosive as anything on the right?
No. So, I mean, we can go through any of these statements. I'm still putting a pin in the Mar-a-Lago thing because I think it's important to go back to, but I'm very familiar with the 2020 election.
Okay.
I think the issue is that, one, when people say, well, it wasn't adjudicated on the facts, it was tossed on standing or procedural grounds, that's bad for the person bringing the case. If you're losing on standing, then you must have never had a serious case to begin with, because that
Okay.
is literally the easiest part of a case to survive. To build a prima facie case saying that I have authorization to bring this case in front of this court has subject matter jurisdiction, and it's the appropriate venue to hear the case, and here are my complaints where I'm alleging that a law was broken. In half of these, they didn't even have the remedies that they were looking for was to toss the entire outcome of that election, which is an insane remedy if you're looking for that. A court's not even going to bother to hear the case, because the whole point of a court hearing a case is that they're going to grant you some kind of relief. If a court can't do anything about it, then the court's not going to listen to it. Number one. Number two, for the evidence that was made public, we know that for a lot of this, it was a blatant lie. So, for instance, when we watch Trump's lawyers show and we watch Trump talk about the hidden boxes and that in the State Farm arena that were pulled out from under the table and put back, and we don't know where they came from, we do know where they came from. And you can tell because if you watch the full 6-hour video where she's giving a presentation to the state election board or state legislature or whatever, you can see her fast forward 10 minutes where they were counting, they finished counting for the night, they take the boxes, put them on the floor, slide them under. 10 minutes later, they get a call saying, actually, we're going to resume counting because we want to get these results out faster. They take the same boxes out, they put them on the table. Not only was that a complete and total bold-faced lie when it was first presented in court or presented to the public, it was a lie that Trump repeated up to and including his speech on January 6th, where he encouraged his followers to go and riot at the Capitol to try to delay the outcome of the election. So every single case.
Hey, Destiny cooking. I'm curious to see how he responds to this.
Has been some variation of them not knowing if a law was broken. You can listen to hours and hours of deposition. You can read the subpoenas. You can read the judge's decisions. There's a reason why you guys will say, well, all of them were thrown out. None was adjudicated on the merits. Trump, was president for 4 years. He had Barr look into all of these claims. Barr said that all of them were BS. Trump is president now. He has the ability to go back and look at stuff. Nothing has been dug up. In fact, the first time Trump was president, when he also made claims that the election was rigged, he put together an election board to look at if there was any impropriety or fraud that happened in any of the states, and they found nothing. They disbanded it in like a year. For the final point, you bring this point up that well, it's crazy that they say this was the safest election ever because there hasn't been a comparative analysis on fraud. I think the point of the statement was to say that there were more people, more cameras, more systems that were looking at this election than in any prior election. And I would argue that just like how Doge went through the entire government and massively failed at discovering any waste, fraud, or abuse, Donald Trump and all of his cronies have been...
I didn't realize this was an actual claim. Did someone actually say this? If that is the case, that someone says this, then I don't know why you would say that. I think the only reason why you would logically make a statement like this is because you are trying to rewrite or reframe the narrative in a extreme other way to capture a certain level of doubt to the original claim. Other than that, I don't know. There's just no point of making these absolute claims of, this is the most, the best, the greatest. It's just a waste of time, in my opinion. So, yeah.
Looking at so much election-related stuff, and the only fraud, weird stuff we've seen has come from the Republican side. Tina Peters being a great example of that. Trump trying to steal the election with his false elector sites being another great example of that.
All right. So
Cooked.
So let me offer a couple thoughts. Number one, if you're right that a bungled legal effort failed on account of the incompetence of the people who tried to prove the fraud, I would argue by the same token that the Democratic goofballs who launched 90 plus charges against Trump in multiple jurisdictions were...
This guy cannot stay on one point to save his life. He just be jumbling around different points. What point are we talking about? Well, what's the debate? Are you just gonna pivot and deflect because you can't? All right, if you want to concede, you know what? I'm being honest. I think Destiny should go like, all right, so we're moving on to this point, so you concede, right? This is how you get them to focus on what the fuck we're talking about.
Equally dumb because they made claims that they were unable to sustain. The cases were thrown out, made moot, exposed to the public for their prima facie idiocy, or they capsized of their own weight. They were withdrawn. Fannie Willis was.
Most of the cases, or a lot of the cases, from my understanding, were not thrown out due to standing, though. And a lot of them are currently going, or they're on pause because he's the president. So is that comparable?
Basically had her own problems and had to withdraw. The successors basically decided that's the end of that. So what I'm getting at is either we rely on the legal process as a pretty fair adjudicator of these kinds of claims, in which case you got to grant that the case against Trump ended up, think of it, you didn't have one shot. You had like 7 shots at this guy. You failed in all of them. Even in the one place where you, quote, got him on the ultimate bogus case, which was in New York, the judge himself was too timid to impose a verdict and basically says, Mr. Trump, you can go. I wish you well. Even the judge knew that he was part of a political game and he had to fess up. Because if he was really enforcing the law, think of it, if you or I were found guilty of 34 felonies, the judge would have said, I'm imposing a sentence. My sentence might be overturned or maybe held to be invalid, but this man has broken the law 34 times. In fact, think of the stupidity. This was 34 different checks, so apparently it's 34 different felonies. The lawfare of it couldn't be more obvious or blatant. Now,
Why did the jury? Why did the jury convict him in New York?
What's that?
Why did the jury convict him if it was just lawfare?
Because a jury in New York, like a jury in DC, is going to be, well, all right.
Aren't you saying then that half the country is living in delusion if you can't even trust a jury of every single person, that a single person could say, I don't agree with the verdict here?
You think the OJ jury got it right?
The OJ, that's a totally different case.
Well, I mean, if you trust the jury, then they
Yo, this guy just be pivoting. He's like, all right, I'm losing on this point. Hail Mary, losing on this point. Screen pass. I'm just throwing shit out there. Flea flicker. You know, we gotta see what sticks because he is just fucking getting good.
But they got it right.
I can say that juries
Don't
might.
agree.
I can say, wait, I can disagree with juries sometimes. You just said that there are 2 sections of the United States in New York and DC, and I'm willing to bet you'd say other states where there is no jury that could hear. Well, I'm curious, actually. Fine. There are things in the OJ case that I think it seems like he was clearly guilty of something. What law in New York State that he was convicted of breaking, that he received almost 34 felony counts for, do you think he didn't actually break? Did he not lie when he paid his lawyer Cohen a fee that was actually just a money transfer to Stormy Daniels and then commit a bookkeeping fraud in the furtherance of that lie, which is why the misdemeanor was upgraded to a felony? Do you think that's not true?
One of the problems with living in this kind of society today.
So he's not gonna answer the question. Oh my god, this guy, bro. He just refuses to engage in the conversation itself. He just keeps on deflecting.
And one of the essential defining elements of lawfare is simply to ask this question. If anybody else did that, or if Trump himself did it, but was not running for president, would these charges have been brought? And again, we're all watching this. We're not on the jury.
How are you going to get guilty of the Stormy Daniels thing if you're not running for office and not fucking porn stars and not paying off is Cohen an attorney? So I don't know what you're doing. Like, let me not engage. I bet if someone else did it, no, because people like me who clearly see the wrongdoing don't play double standards. We're not MAGA. We're not hypocrites.
We're watching this as spectators from the outside. We've got to use a certain rule of common sense. You have this guy, Trump. He's in the thick of New York real estate. He's in the thick of all these claims of like bombastic claims like my Mar-a-Lago's worth X, this is worth Y, my assets are worth this. Everybody does this. Now, if all of this was so fraudulent, how does the man go 75 years of his life without a single charge? Then interesting.
Everybody fucks porn stars and pays off attorneys with campaign money. And he's like, oh yeah, Donald Trump has never been guilty, so he's obviously innocent, even though, bro, what is this argument?
He enters politics as a Republican. 93 charges are dropped on his head. Now, if you genuinely think, and look, we could very well in this audience be exploring the delusions we're talking about. If you genuinely are a smart guy and you think, I think that's right. The guy was squeaky clean for 75 years. Then he became a habitual criminal and committed 93 offenses, warranting the guy being jailed for life, a guy who just happens to have been the president of the United States and on the verge of being reelected a second time. But you don't have to worry about that if you can put him away. And this doesn't raise any issues of political targeting, Stalinism, find me the man and I'll find you the crime. If you genuinely don't think any of that is at issue, then we are at a little bit of an intellectual breakdown here.
So this isn't an intellectual breakdown. This is a bad conversation about politics with your family at Thanksgiving. There has to be a better factual analysis then. Isn't it weird? Isn't it weird that so the 34 felonies that he was charged with and convicted of in New York State, he did those. For the Mar-a-Lago documents case, this is the thing, he couldn't have possibly been charged with a crime like this before having a security clearance or being in a job with security clearance because he wouldn't have had access to these documents. So for the Mar-a-Lago case, he took classified material from the White House, stored it in an area where classified material is now to be kept. Yep. He showed other people some of that classified material, and then he resisted efforts from NARA and the FBI to retrieve said material, and he was directing his employees to hide it and lie to the FBI when they were requesting information about this material. This is incredibly unique.
Is true, and all the rest of it is true.
Which part of it was not true?
The first part of it, that he took the documents, is true. The second question is, how does a president who takes his own documents, which he has the plenary power to declassify, how does he prima facie violate the law, especially when you consider that pretty much every other president, going back to Nixon, had documents. Mike had documents. Joe Biden had documents in his garage, including a bunch sitting in his car. These documents were fully exposed. There were documents at the Penn Biden Center, accessible to everyone. And yet the guy who looks into it goes, I don't think we should charge this guy because he's kind of forgetful and he won't really withstand trial because he tends not to remember things. I mean, since when does somebody get a pass from a serious offense because they don't have
I've heard that claim before about Biden getting scot-free because he forgets things, because he forgot things. I'll see if Destiny rebuttals and gives me a good answer. If not, then I'll look it up.
Of the stuff that they manifestly did. So when you suddenly develop this kind of selective aggression, Trump has done all these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you conveniently forget that presidents have routinely taken their own stuff. Then again, I have to say that this looks to me quite clearly a case of isolating Trump. I mean, the way we know.
Well, here, real quick, just on this, because you laid out some facts, and the facts.
You say he obstructed.
Well, wait, real quick. So you say these words, prima facie. Prima facie means has the person who is under the jurisdiction of some place, has he met the prerequisite elements to have committed the crime? So the crime of retention of classified materials requires intent. So one funny thing that conservatives like to do is they like to say that, well, Herr said that Biden was forgetful and he wouldn't be able to stand trial because of his forgetfulness. That's not true. What Herr was speaking to when he was speaking of Biden's state of mind was that he probably forgot that he had these documents here or that he was storing these things. The crime that speaks, the federal statutes that talk about the retention of classified material that makes it a crime is knowing that you actually have them. That's why when Biden NARA contacted the FBI and said, hey, we have classified documents here. We think you guys should come and grab them. They weren't convicted or charged with any crimes because it seems like they weren't trying to intentionally store classified material. As opposed to Trump, who was showing documents to people, and you say, well, they were his, right? Why did he say twice, I could have unclassified these, or I could have declassified these, but I didn't? And also, the second quick thing, the president does not have plenary authority for declassification of everything, especially when it comes to the Department of Energy, which has nuclear secrets, especially when you're talking about TSSCI, SAP, separate access programs, or special access programs that are part of our nuclear secrets that Donald Trump was keeping at Mar-a-Lago. So even that he couldn't have declassified on his own.
Here's the problem. I mean, had this case proceeded all the way and these elements of the crime that you're describing been proven, we could then debate what was going on. I'll give you the Trump side of it. I took these documents. I was contacted by the National Archives, NARA, I guess it's called, about the fact you need to give some of these documents back. What does some mean here? Trump is like, some of them may be mine, some of them I may have to return. And so a process now begins of bargaining back and forth. At one point, the FBI comes to Mar-a-Lago. Remember, Mar-a-Lago is a protected facility. Comes to Mar-a-Lago and puts a padlock on the storage facility where the documents are held. So what are we dealing with here? We're dealing with a president who finishes his term. People come into the White House, clear all the stuff out.
He's going on this huge soliloquy. I mean, this guy completely railroaded. It was pretty clear on what Destiny was saying, which was correct. It's all about intent. The intent part. I know it gets difficult when you can't really just be honest because you have to constantly defend Trump. But, like, if the guy clearly states his knowledge of having the documents, at that point, what is there to defend? What is there to defend? If Biden went out of his way to give the documents back and Trump is like, I'm going to keep the documents, what is there to defend? Nothing. This is just, say it with me, delusion.
Where are they going to move it? They move it, not surprisingly, to the residence, Mar-a-Lago. And then begins this process of negotiating over these documents. If you're saying based upon the fact that you think that laws were broken, I would say, what? Because Destiny thinks that the president broke the law, we should lock him up? No. If you can show me a legal process where these elements of the crime were proven, we could look at it.
Well, that's what an indictment is showing these are the laws that we're saying that he broke. This is the evidence we're presenting to the grand jury. Okay, well then you know that the grand jury returned an okay to charge Donald Trump with these crimes. Okay. Also, you said that Mar-a-Lago was secured, not secured for the storage of classified information. And if Donald Trump truly had nothing to hide and he was cooperating, returning things as he should, why was he having his employee hide boxes from his own lawyers so that they would not be fully truthful, not of their own fault, but because they had no idea when they were communicating with the FBI about documents that Trump was retaining and that he was having brought to his room, going over, taking some back, keeping others, and then telling Nada, his employee, to lie to the lawyers about what they were hiding.
Whenever you have an indictment, the prosecution, in this case, it was the Biden administration.
It was Jack Smith. It was a special prosecutor.
Okay, Jack Smith. It was a special prosecutor appointed by the Biden regime.
It wasn't appointed by Biden. It was appointed by Merrick Garland.
It was appointed by Merrick Garland. It's not part of the Biden regime.
Trump wants to directly control his attorney general, but most presidents don't do that.
Come on. Merrick Garland was an objective, fair-minded. He was not making any kind of political.
Why wasn't the special prosecutor appointed?
You're actually trying to get me to enter into your dream world here. And I'm
only talking facts.
There are no facts.
There were facts.
No, because an indictment is allegations. Unless the indictment is presented in court, the other side gets to fight back. It's like if I were to take any indictment and read it, and then I think, oh, the guy obviously did it because he did this, he bought a gun, and this and that. I haven't read the counterpoints. I haven't seen the cross-examination. It hasn't gone to court. But if you accept all the claims in the indictment as, quote, factually true and consider that there's no other side of the matter, then it's easy to go, I got the facts.
So then wouldn't it be easy for you to just say, if everything in the indictment is true, Donald Trump would be guilty of those crimes rather than trying to make excuses for what was in the indictment? Because there's another weird game that I notice the conservatives play where conservatives will do this thing where they'll defend a thing, and then after they've defended the thing, they'll say that the thing that they were defending is indefensible, but if it did happen, they give justifications for it anyway. Why not just say, well, I don't believe what's in the indictment, even though you say that they're just allegations? They're not. You have to show evidence to a grand jury to secure the indictment, so there's at least some evidence that's presented.
And look, the indictment contains elements of factuality and elements of subjectivity. So the factuality would be something like this. Did you take a document? Did you put it in the garage?
My brain is so cooked that I do prefer 1.5 speed, but just for the people.
Was it found in your Corvette? The elements of subjectivity are things like this. Were you authorized to take it? Even if you were not authorized to take it, did you follow the procedures to return it? If you didn't follow those procedures, how culpable are you, let's say, for not doing that? Because there are all kinds of people who break all kinds of laws, and they're given a pass because, as you mentioned with Biden, you said that his forgetfulness had to do with the documents. Wrong. It was very clear from the special counsel's report that his forgetfulness had to do with trial. We cannot take this guy to trial. He deserves to go to trial. He did break the law, but we don't think that he can withstand trial because basically his brain is fried. And so
her never said anything like that, yeah.
Is that a fact or not?
No.
That's not a fact.
No, the forgetfulness had to do with the crime. The elements of the crime is the willful retention of classified material. If you walk out of a skiff and you have something on you by accident, you might get fired. Depending on your job, you'll definitely get fired. But to charge you with a crime, you need intent. Now, for every single element that you described there, well, you'd have to take them and you'd have to know that you didn't follow the right procedure. An example for showing that subjective.
All right, this is a substance points that I'm curious. What did it say about Joe Biden keeping classified documents and him forgetting? I'm gonna see if I could find the document itself. We'll see. Because I am genuinely curious. We can dissect it, analyze it, all that good stuff. All right, I found it. All right, let's look at it. Several defenses are likely to create reasonable doubt as to such charges. For example, okay. Wait, because I'm not reading the full thing, so I want to make sure I could read what I got. Mitchell wrote his with the help of the ghostwriter, recorded the conversation. At the time, he was renting a home in Virginia, where he met his ghostwriter to work on his second memoir downstairs, blah, blah. So the interference that when Biden said in 2017 that he just had found all the classified stuff downstairs in Virginia, he's referring to the same marked classified documents about Afghanistan that FBI agents found in 2022 in his Delaware garbage. So this right here says that Biden, when he noticed it, he told the people. Cool. Very different from Trump. Nevertheless, we do not believe the evidence is sufficient, as jurors would likely find a reasonable doubt for one or more of several reasons. Both when he served as vice president, when the Afghanistan Democrats were found in Biden's garage in 2022, especially of them in his Delaware home, was not a basis for prosecution because as vice president and president, he had the authority to keep classified documents in his home. The best case for charge will lie on Mr. Biden's possession of the Afghan documents in his Virginia home in February 2017, when he was a private citizen and when he told his ghostwriter he had just found classified material. Okay, so he told okay, so I'll take that back. He didn't tell the FBI or whoever, he told the ghostwriter. Several defenses are likely to create reasonable doubt as to such charges. For example, Biden would have found the documents as Virginia home, forgotten about them soon after. So he saw the documents and just forgot that it was there, is one of the insinuated claims. Hold on. Okay. This could convince some reasonable jurors that he did not retain them willfully. When Biden told his ghostwriter about finding all the classified stuff downstairs, his tone was matter of fact. For a person who had viewed classified documents nearly every day for 8 years as vice president, including regularly in his home, finding classified documents at home less than a month after leaving office could have been an unremarkable and forgettable event. Notably, the classified Afghan documents did not come up again in Mr. Biden's dozen of hours of recorded conversations with the ghostwriter or in his book. And the place where the Afghan documents were eventually found, in a badly damaged box surrounded by a household detritus, suggests the documents might have been forgotten. In addition, Mr. Biden's memory was significantly limited, both during his recorded interview with the ghostwriter in 2017. Sorry. I'm already getting tired. Should have drunk a Red Bull. With our office in 2023 and his cooperation with our investigation, including by reporting to the government that the Afghanistan documents were in his Delaware garage, will likely convince some jurors that he had made an innocent mistake rather than acting willfully. That is, with intent to break the law as the statute requires. So the forgetfulness is in regards to him just forgetting it was there. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. I don't know if there's really no other interpretation to make from this.
Argument might be Donald Trump showing something to somebody saying, I should have declassified this, but I didn't. Don't look too closely. That would be an example of like a subjective thing where, sounds like he maybe didn't have the authority to do that. Also, the SAP level classified stuff he had from the Department of Energy, he could have never on his own declassified, and he didn't go through any proper procedures there. And I think one of the most telling things, this is subjective evaluation, one of the most telling things is that Donald Trump never denied the behavior. He never said he didn't do it. Instead, all the conservatives started to switch to psychic declassification as the reason why Trump could actually take anything he wanted out of the White House.
No, look, you have the staccato style of mixing elements of truth with elements of pure garbage.
Wait, what was the one thing I just said that was pure garbage?
I'll tell you. So Biden started taking classified documents when he was in the Senate. Okay? No one even thinks that Biden was non-compos mentis then. So according to you, the special prosecutor didn't bring charges not because Biden is gone now, but because he was gone before. And I'm saying, was he gone in the 80s? Was Biden mentally gone in the 90s when he took those documents? Why not prosecute him for those? But
well, it says it pretty clearly in the document right here. They believe that Biden just forgot it was here. He typically has classified documents in his home. And the belief is that when it comes down to it, cooperate, including by reporting to the government, convince some jurors, right here. Right here, that they eventually found in Mr. Biden's Delaware garage in a badly damaged box, suggests that the documents might have been forgotten. Okay? So the report insinuates that it's possible Biden just forgot that the documents were there. Not because he was old and senile, but mostly because he is consistently around classified documents because he's super familiar with it and just forgot about it after putting it aside in his garage. It's the same principle as like, sometimes you have your phone and then you put it in the same spot every single time. And then out of nowhere, you forgot where your phone is. Like, oh crap. You're looking, and it's just in your pocket. You don't need to be 70 to just forget where you put things. That happens all the time, especially if something that you don't really care about. Like, it's classified documents, but he's obviously not reading it or caring about it. So I don't know. I think it's pretty simple thing to understand. But as Destiny said earlier, MAGA lives in delusion.
Clearly, the special counsel was not talking about Biden's mind in 1995. He was talking about Biden's mind today.
No, it doesn't have to do about being forgetful or competent. Did you
are misstating why Biden got off the hook, pretending that it was an objective, fair-minded decision by a neutral guy. And I'm saying no. Now we turn to Trump.
Wait. Why, for her, I'm just curious. Walk me through this. Why would you have a special prosecutor and then authorize him to release a report that's damning to Biden and report all of this stuff publicly if it was all politically partisan in the first place? Why not just lie about everything from the start? If they control the DOJ, the special prosecutor, and the FBI, why even report publicly that Biden had turned in documents?
Well, the scandal of Biden's documents became extremely embarrassing to the Mar-a-Lago case. And so there was an immediate need. Okay, we now have to cover for our guy to make it seem like the other guy is the only guy who did something wrong.
No, why report it at all?
Let me give you my theory, and then you tell me why it's wrong. So what does the DOJ do? They pick a guy in Delaware, nominally a Republican, but nevertheless, he's under the thumb of the Biden DOJ. He's reporting to them. He has to ultimately survive their scrutiny. Merrick Garland is still in charge. And so this guy conveniently comes out, Biden, he did some bad things, but you know what? He's a little forgetful. We can't really go ahead. Anyway, what you do is you get an official imprimatur. Biden's off the hook. All right, let's now proceed to get the guy we always set out to get, namely Trump. And what I'm saying is, you're supposed to be like a sophisticated political guy, but you can't see that there is a clear effort here. How do we clean up the crimes of our...
So yes, there's a clear effort. Joe Biden did what any president typically does, lets his attorney general handle it. They hired a special prosecutor to ensure that there's not a level of bias, right? Matter of fact, you said he was Republican, but apparently he's under Biden's regime. And then he puts out a report that people like you can use to attack Biden. But all of that is just a scheme to make himself not look so bad. And then when Trump does stuff that's corrupt, when Trump does stuff that whether it's pardoning corrupt politicians, pardoning criminals, whether it's having his corrupt meme coin, whether it's attacking free speech, whether it's threatening Rob Reiner, there's always an excuse. But then these motherfucking delusional morons create this elaborate scheme of all these parts to insinuate Biden ran this like corrupt regime. But when they see corruption, they're blind. These people are pathetic. They're a waste of space in the political landscape. I swear to God. Just a waste of space.
Guy, because we want to stick the classified document offense only on the other guy, even though our guy did the same thing and arguably worse, certainly for a much longer period of time and much more carelessly, because the documents are sitting not only in his damn garage, but they're sitting at the Penn Biden Center where anybody can wander in and have a look at them. And not only that, if you look at all the reports that Hunter Biden made to Burisma, I'm talking about
before we go to Burisma. So just to be clear, so I can understand. Because we started off in Burisma. You're saying that the same FBI that supposedly orchestrated January 6th, that worked as a deep state check on Trump's power, even when Trump was in office and was capable of doing all of these grand things, this Attorney General Merrick Garland, who was totally under the thumb of President Biden, despite the fact that he dragged his feet on all the prosecutions of Trump and waited way too long to appoint Jack Smith, and is one of the number one center of complaints of every center-left Democrat. You're saying that that same institution's FBI was making it publicly known that they had found documents at Biden's house. Why, if they could suppress, if Merrick Garland could control a special prosecutor, which I don't know if you're aware of or not, the whole point of having a special prosecutor is that he's not directly under the thumb of the Attorney General. Otherwise, we would just call that a DOJ prosecutor, right? You're telling me they had so much power to cover the stuff that they were influencing this 300-page report that Herb puts out that has a lot of damning testimony, a lot of stuff that makes Biden look bad, but they couldn't just cover up the initial FBI claim?
All right, so notice how this debate has shifted from the factual.
Okay, wait, hold on. Let me just
rhetorical
conjecture. Hold on, this is not you're doing the rhetoric thing. So
you just did the whole fucking rhetoric on making up these claims about. Yo, I hate these people. I hate these people with a passion. They're some of the nastiest individuals in planet Earth.
Everything I've stated thus far relating to Donald Trump's indictments was a pure fact. You are spinning me a tale.
It's a repetition of a charge. It's
of
not
an indictment. Yes, you're giving me conspiracy theory.
Of an indictment.
You're giving me conspiracy.
Now, let's come back. I'll answer your question. You're like, this FBI, how is it that they would have... The truth of it is simple. You have a case against Trump Trump is now going to have 75 attorneys on his side that are going to be looking into who else had classified documents.
Why? That wouldn't help him win his case. That doesn't make sense.
That's one of the ways you defend, is you show that this crime has been widely indulged in by other people and was not seen to be a crime.
No, that's not how you defend against a crime. It
Yes,
doesn't
it is.
work that way.
No, no, no.
If that was the case, no one in the United States would get a DUI or traffic ticket ever again, because plenty of people drive drunk and speed and they don't get traffic tickets. The reality is the facts of the Mar-a-Lago indictment are unique to Trump.
No.
They're unique to Trump.
You want to play attorney here? We can pursue the point.
Okay.
It is frequently the case that if somebody can show, in fact, this was part of my own campaign finance violation case, where we basically said Dinesh gave $20,000 of his own money to a college friend who ran for office, and he was $20,000 over the limit. Part of my defense was no American in the entire country's history has ever been prosecuted on a first-time basis for giving that amount of money with no quid pro quo and no benefit to himself, and prosecuted as a felony with an attempt to put him away for years.
But
This
if we're
has
going
never been done. Hold on.
to go with that, you
That
lost
is
that
the
case,
definition.
though. But you lost that case. So this is an example of the defense not working.
Okay, so in your fluid metric, if I lost the case, I must be guilty. Just like if OJ was acquitted, he must be innocent. But oh no, that wasn't the case. So
I'm just trying to talk about the
I'm just
facts
saying
of what
you
are
have
laid
a-
out.
Why the fuck you keep on bringing up OJ, you little tiny little pathetic little man, bro? Like I'm gonna be honest, I do not respect these people at all, because it's not a real good. This is not a real conversation. It's not a real conversation. It's narratives. It is trying to win a position. It's trying to make yourself look good for your MAGA cult leader. This guy is pathetic.
you have a
I
fluid
don't,
barometer.
it's not fluid. It's very
so
solid.
So according to you, because I quote lost the case, let me tell you why I quote lost the case. Here I am, an immigrant. I'm sitting.
Nah, no way this MAGA moron is going to use the immigrant card. Please tell me, please God, please tell me he's not about to use an immigrant card. Let's do this again.
Case. Let me tell you why I quote lost the case. Here I am, an immigrant. I'm sitting in the offices of the Southern District of New York, and I'm looking at guys, and it's very clear from what they say that they're like, if you don't plead to this case, we're going to charge you with bank fraud. I go, bank fraud? They go, yeah, because you took your money out of the bank. And they go, if you don't plead to this case, we'll charge you with mail fraud. I go, mail fraud? They go, yeah, because you put your check in the mail. These are the kind of people you're dealing with, where they take what you did, they re-describe it 7 other ways. They then basically find a way to say to you, look, you want to take your chances with a Clinton appointee judge in a New York courtroom where you're facing years in prison, or are you willing to plead guilty? Now, again, if you live in
Yeah, you sound this sounds like exactly how a criminal would try to describe his the oppositional force. Yeah, the courts are wrong. I'm right, obviously. You know, these people are evil. Trust me. Just because he's an Indian man with a good suit, these people are pieces of garbage, bro.
imaginary America where you don't think that if they want to get a doctor, they charge them with illegally administering pain medicine, and if they don't want to get somebody, they find something on your tax return.
Right.
This is something that happens in this country, sadly, every single day. And it's
When you
kinda
say
hard-
that, when you say
it's
something happens,
kind of hard for me to believe that I, a conservative, have to tell you this when the left at one time would have been nodding vigorously and saying, yeah.
okay, the left is not in the room with us right now. Okay, so just focusing. I mean, like, if you want, we can go through the details of your case. I don't know if you want to do that. I don't think we have to do that right now.
This is the same this is the same person that was like, Trump was squeaky clean, a fucking billionaire. You know, if we want to get into, you know, generalized notions of the abuse of power, one of the easiest way to abuse your power is being a billionaire and being able to pay people off. But hey, man, we see courts be bad and corrupt, but a billionaire like Trump, who has so many accusations of him doing terrible things and has been friends with Jeffrey Epstein, he's squeaky clean, though. He's squeaky. He's never done anything wrong. But this one court system that went up against me and didn't do what I liked, they're corrupt. Convenient.
Now, but if you're saying, I'm just curious, you said that this is a thing that happens all the time in the United States, this type of lawfare. So then did it also happen under the 4 years of Trump, and it's happening now under Trump too?
Is what happening? Campaign finance?
Is he abusing
Dinesh is what's the Indian word for coon? He's that.
the legal system to go after political opponents that everyone else has done?
It remains to be seen. In my opinion, look.
Wait, so real quick, when Donald Trump puts out a Truth Social saying, Pam Bondi, my attorney general,
Okay.
I want you to go after these 3 people. I think it was Bolton, Letitia James, and Comey. And I want you to use this prosecutor.
Yeah.
Illegitimately, she was appointed, and that's why her case are tossed. And Pam Bondi files indictments against 2 of those people with that prosecutor. You're saying that this type of behavior is just part parcel of being the president or attorney general of the U.S.?
No. I'm not saying that.
Okay, so this is an exceptional behavior that Trump is.
He's gonna say, well, because Joe Biden did it, it's only fair that Donald Trump gets to do it. Guaranteed. That's what he says. Come on.
done that no one else in U.S. history has done before,
Let me
right?
say what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this: you take a guy and try to put him away for life, and fail. That guy is going to be a little pissed.
So you would say that
Hold
Donald
on,
Trump is
hold-
Yo, these people are so predictable. They are lame ducks to have the same talking points over and over and over again. They are, oh my goodness. These, you can't make this shit up. You
engaging
can't-
in immoral behavior,
Hold
but he's
on,
doing
stop
it as an
jumping in.
emotional
I'm
response.
trying to be honest with you guys, and you're jumping in as if you're trying to score
Go
like
fuck
debating
yourself.
points.
I'm not trying to score debating. I'm trying to say
Let me
factual.
say what I'm saying. Let me say what I'm saying.
The president was mad. Go ahead.
Try to put yourself in a try to have a little imaginative
Yes, US
identification with the
politics
people
has
we're talking
become
about, right?
unfortunately
So here you have
disgusting,
Letitia James
disgusting,
making a Trump's way of
reality
thinking
TV
anyway,
trash.
utterly fraudulent case.
Unfortunate.
The bankers came in and said we were not defrauded. We did our own evaluations. We made tons of money on this deal. So you have fraud without a victim. And then Letitia James, well, New York was the victim. Okay. And then evidence comes to light, by the way, not discovered by Trump, reported on in the public media, that Letitia James, and by the way, there are other people doing this too, tries to take advantage of getting mortgage rate benefits by claiming multiple primary residences. Are you saying for a fact she didn't do that?
Correct. All of that has been tossed.
You're
yes.
saying that Letitia James...
Her and the chair of the Federal Board of Reserves or whatever, where they try to use this weird mortgage claim because it's apparently the only crimes that Donald Trump is familiar with. They don't involve classified documents. Yeah, they fabricated these charges. That's why they were tossed. For these 2 people, it came out they weren't true. There was a mismarking on a mortgage form, I think, at the bank about it.
Okay.
But DeSouza's pea-sized brain can only conceptualize that when Biden does something, they're all corrupt. They all made this stuff up. None of it's factual. But when Trump has done it, it is concrete, solid, and the person's guilty. That is such a simplistic way to live life. My side always good, your side always bad and wrong. And somehow they're always wrong. It's just an interesting reality.
Actual rate she qualified for. If you look at the actual underlying documentation, it was pretty obvious she wasn't applying for secondary or tertiary residences as also principal residences for the purposes of obtaining a low interest rate mortgage. It was all bullshit. Yes.
I don't agree with that at all.
What was I factually wrong about?
Hold on. And
There's no disagreement factually. Okay.
well, there is a disagreement factually, and we can look at the facts of that case if you want. But the point I'm trying to make is this: if somebody who's trying to get you on real estate fraud is themselves engaging in real estate fraud, there's a certain delicious irony in exposing that in retaliation. It's not that you're framing her for doing something she didn't do.
So yeah, the president's allowed to go after anybody he wants because there's real charges put on him based off things he's done. So he's allowed to go after anybody he wants based.
Let's for a moment grant that she did it. Are you saying that because it's Trump, he doesn't have any right to bring charges against her, even if they're true? And moreover, let's say that they bring the charges back
That's the
and
problem.
she's found guilty. Will you
He
change
just
it?
went after them because he felt like it, because he's using his DOJ to go after people. I feel it's all intentional, make population fight themselves instead of the people who are actually in power, with while big finance, corporations, security state, and the military industrial complex keeps expanding the American empire in the shadows. I mean, I do think it's a distraction too. I do think there's I don't even think it's an American thing at this point. I do think there is an intent behind like powers to be, because there's a lot of people from like China and Russia and then like other foreign nations that love that we're fighting right now. So I think it's just the elite versus everybody else. I'm simple-minded like that. I do think the elite benefit from this, and then I do think other like dictators benefit from this as well. I consider dictators elite as well, so whatever. We should be focusing on the better resources, decreasing the wealth inequality gap, decreasing the providing more humanitarian aid all across the world. There's like good things we can do, but no, MAGA doesn't want to.
Your opinion?
That's
Yeah,
become
sure.
a
Yeah,
fascist
yeah,
empire.
yeah, of course. But
Just
like,
because they found her guilty, let's just say they
well,
took her
you
to a
would look at
court.
the underlying facts, but I would say, and this is where I'll grant to you, I'm definitely sympathetic of the president having these feelings. Maybe, and you can, I don't know, maybe we'll meet in the middle here. Maybe it would be good if we had a independent attorney general who wasn't taking direct orders from the president, especially if we're saying he might be a vindictive man-child, and that person should have the luxury of operating independently, like in every other presidential administration past, instead of taking direct orders from the president, who might, as you just laid out an excuse for, do engage in vindictive prosecutions of political opponents.
We now know.
Oh
from
my
Biden
God,
years.
he just uses. Hey, that was a great debate tactic right there. He used his words against them. He was talking about. He was coming up with this entire narrative. Well, they were going after Trump, so it's only fair that Trump goes after them too. And then Des is like, well, maybe we should have an independent attorney general because Donald Trump wants revenge and he acts like a spoiled little brat. That's you cooked. You cooked Destiny. You did your thing. That was a good one.
That all the cases, including the state cases, were being filtered through not the Attorney General's office, but the Biden White House. Why
That's
do you
not
think?
true.
Hold on. Well,
Base.
it's not true.
That's not true.
I mean, stating it doesn't make it so.
And
you know?
I know, I agree. That's what I'm saying to you. Where's your evidence for any of it? Where's the evidence that her was influenced by Garland? Where's your evidence that her was influenced by Biden? Where's the evidence of Biden giving direction to Merrick Garland? Where's the evidence of NARA or the FBI behaving improperly with regards to the...
I mean, his evidence is, well, don't you think it like makes sense? So nothing, basically. He's gonna appeal to this delusional common sense, which is not common sense because it's delusion, and then make some shit up.
Mar-a-Lago case.
Okay.
Where's the evidence that Jack Smith was told by anybody to do his investigation what he did? There's no evidence for any of this stuff.
Let me ask you this.
Sure.
How many times did either Fani Willis or her lover show up in Washington, D.C. and meet with the Biden administration? How many times?
It doesn't matter. That doesn't mean it's
Doesn't
filtered through the
matter.
White House.
If okay,
The president isn't allowed to talk to anybody now, or else it counts as improper
so you're saying
behavior?
it's perfectly fine for them to go to the White House and have a conversation, but you know what? They were talking about a bunch of other stuff unrelated to these prosecutions.
Like when Donald Trump
All right.
calls Putin for
Hold
2
on,
hours
hold
after
on.
kicking out every world leader from the
Let me ask
Oval
you this.
Office, the
Let me ask
president
you
is allowed to have conversations with people. If something improper is happening, I would want to know about it, but you would hope that people are reporting on it or that people have some kind of evidence of it, like we do for all of the improper conversations that Trump has, like when Giuliani made a phone call to Zelensky's aide, or when Trump made a phone call to Zelensky to threaten to withhold aid, or like when Trump made the phone call to Raffensperger to try to rig the election in Georgia, or like when
That's
any of
all.
the other...
This is all bullshit upon bullshit.
No, wait, those calls are recorded.
what it
We've
is.
listened to them. We can hear the phone calls.
Okay, so let's start with the Raffensperger call.
Why don't we go to the Mar-a-Lago stuff? Let's just figure that out.
We are,
Okay.
but what we're doing with Mar-a-Lago is we're trying to.
Did Donald Trump take classified information from the White House?
Yes,
He wasn't supposed to have it at Mar-a-Lago.
Maybe.
What do you mean maybe? Was it Mar-a-Lago a skiff? Is that a secured classified?
It doesn't matter. The
Then
issue
it
is not
does
that. The issue
that
is
is the issue. You
You
cannot...
just said intentionality, and
Sure,
I'm
wait,
saying
we haven't gotten into intentionality yet. Are you allowed to have classified material knowingly outside of a secured classified area?
You might under certain circumstances. Yes.
If you want, there are like 10 different statements I can make that Donald Trump himself issued in 2016 about the importance of classified documentation. In fact, Jack Smith quotes all of them, including the
I read
executive
those.
order. Okay, then you
Let
know
me
how
ask you
embarrassing it
this.
is. Well,
Do
no,
you
so I'm
know-
curious. Donald Trump did all the prerequisites needed to break the law. He held the documents where they weren't supposed to be held. He knew they were classified. He said it to multiple people that he was showing them to, and then he told his employees to obstruct investigators when they're trying to find it. This is a crime, assuming it's all true. There should be the easiest, like, yeah, of course, that would be, if that was true, it would be a crime.
It is a little bit of a difficult question when a president takes his own documents from his own administration, an email or a comment that he sent to Kim Jong.
So you won't answer the question because he's a useful idiot, useful tool for the MAGA cult. He can't say anything negative about Trump because he has no spine. He has a tiny wiener. I just threw that in there. I'm just yapping. I'm tired. This guy's pissing me off and he's making me go to sleep. Destiny's filet mignoning him a lot. I mean, there's really not much to say. Even he can't even propose the like hypothetical scenario of like if it's true he's guilty. They can't even say that because their leader Donald Trump would be upset. And we looked at the document. His claims about Biden were just off.
Is that unauthorized?
Why was there a
Arguably?
special prosecutor for Biden then? Why was her appointed if a president could just do it? Shouldn't Biden have just said, "Oh no, I'm allowed to do that"?
The issue is not whether they did it, because if doing it by itself is illegal, Biden should be in prison right now.
No, it's doing it knowing that you're retaining it outside of classified.
Exactly.
I'm curious, if you're saying it's not a crime, why was there?
Like he wears glasses and he has an Indian accent. Why is he so fucking stupid? How much time does Destiny have to repeat this? When it comes down to it, having the documents is not the crime. It's willingly and intentionally keeping it, even though you're not supposed to have it. That's the crime.
I'm
prosecutor
saying,
for Biden.
okay, and you cut me off earlier, but I was showing why Biden, I think, took a lot of those documents.
Why was there a special prosecutor for Biden if it wasn't a crime?
Yeah,
The special prosecutor was there to investigate the degree of the offense and whether or not charges should be brought.
But you just said it wasn't a crime. If
I
it's a
didn't
president,
say it wasn't a
Make you
crime. I
tired.
said that it depends
I'm
on the
with you.
situation. I said that in a case like this is like a CEO who walks out of a company, takes a bunch of documents with him. His documents that he wrote. Now, hold on.
The documents are America's documents. We don't have a king. You know, Trump is not a king, right? These documents belong to America, the government. It's not King Trump's documents. I don't know why that's so hard to understand. Midwit stuff. Midwit.
There's a difference because we're talking about classified
It's just
documents.
this guy's not even.
But
like even
trying.
CEOs can have
Nothing you're
non-competes. I
doing
mean,
is showing me that Trump's conduct here was distinctive in any way.
okay, can you give me a single example in all of U.S. history of any other president saying to somebody, "Here's a document. I should have declassified it, but I didn't. Don't look too closely."
Okay. Are you saying that if the president said that is by itself evidence that he is guilty?
No, but it's part of the indictment.
Okay, so what I'm saying is part of the indictment. I read it, you read it, big deal. The point is,
It is a big deal, though.
No,
Donald Trump said
I'm
it was a
saying
big deal like 15 times when he was talking about other people retaining classified information. Remember how big of a deal you guys made about it when you talked about Hillary's emails for like 3 years?
yeah, and she was never charged.
Because
Why
she wasn't guilty of retention willfully, of knowingly
and you
doing
know
it.
that
That's what
How
the
do you know
investigator said, because Comey said it.
because Comey said it, right?
Do they? They have to talk about Epstein files right now. They're talking about Mar-a-Lago and how Trump kept classified documents. But if they talk about Epstein and this guy starts caping for Trump regarding Epstein, that's gonna be hilarious.
Okay, so here's what
I'm
we're
sorry, do you have
getting
evidence to the
at.
contrary?
So
Wait, do you have evidence to the contrary of that?
Ultimately, we are
No
now
evidence,
we're
okay.
trapped in an appeal to authority.
It's
According
an
to
appeal
you,
authority.
Comey, Merrick Garland, Biden, unimpeachable sources. Whatever they say.
Unimpeachable, yes. Biden. This is their strategy. According to you, they've done nothing wrong ever. They're the perfect beings. They are squeaky clean. Like they play this fucking 5-year-old game where it's like, yeah, I'm factually getting like fucking butt munched, but I'm going to, was it obfuscate? I'm going to shift the scope of the narrative by providing the counter example, but eliciting it in the most bad faith way to characterize your argument as something that is hyperbolic or hypocritical. This is so ridiculous.
They should be taken as
No, they
gospel.
are impeachable, but you should have
Jackson.
evidence to impeach them. If you don't agree with what they say, then you should say, this is why I disagree.
Right, so
Not
what
with
I'm
a,
saying
not with a crazy tail you spin, but like, here's some
I need to start
contrary
drinking
evidence.
some
From Mar-a-Lago,
alcohol
we
when
see
I
the
read-
pictures
when
of
I
the
watch this
documents
stuff.
on the stage. We see the pictures
get
of the
some- I'm
documents
gonna
in the
get
bathroom.
drunk.
We see the pictures of the boxes filled out with the classified markings
Have
on
you
the
seen
Every time
the
I hear
Biden
something
pictures?
stupid,
I don't know if those are
shot.
released or not. But the
Really?
contention with the Biden
Okay.
pictures wasn't that
The
there was
Biden
classified
pictures
material.
have been
The
widely
contention.
released. You're supposed to be a factual researcher, but
I'm
clearly
a
your
factual.
eye,
I'm a
clearly
factual
your
research.
eye only
There-
focuses
hold on.
right
We
word.
saw the pictures because that was part of a federal indictment for a crime against Trump. Biden and Pence weren't accused of crimes because they made the phone call to the FBI. They made the phone call to NAR to say, "Hey, we think we have stuff here."
You know, the political situation is so bad over there. We have in Sweden have refused sending students there in fear. Yeah, a lot of countries have refused to send like not only students but also a lot of scientists have left America for other countries, especially European countries. We're losing a lot of intellectual capital because our country sucks so much. It's tough.
You should come and grab it. Do you see the difference between behavior?
The difference between
Hey, does
behavior
Sweden
now
like black
goes to a
people?
separate issue, which is how they reacted to Nara. Okay.
Yes, one
And
showed
the-
criminal
hold on,
intent
hold
and the
on.
other didn't.
And
Yes.
the context of this is really important because we now know there's extensive communications between Nara and the Biden DOJ about how to bring charges over this on Trump. That correspondence has been released. So we actually know that the Nara people, who are supposed to be these archives, neutral guys, librarians, no, they were very much part of a scheme for how do we go and get Trump.
I can
So
this
hold
issue, I
on.
can get this done in one question that you're not going to answer again. If that was the case, why didn't they just file charges on him day one? Why did NAR give him 8 months to return documents?
Why did what?
Why did NAR give him 8 months to return documents before the FBI finally got the charges basically ready for him to show up to take them because he wasn't returning anything? Why did they give him 8 months to return it?
Right. And I think the reason is simple, and that is when you're dealing with a massive sheaf of documents, a process of negotiation, it's fairly
Oh, I was making a joke. I said to Sweden like black people. I was making a joke.
familiar, by the way. Other
Wish I
people
could
have done
watch
it.
South
Excuse me, you said this wasn't a process of negotiation. You said this was them talking to the FBI, which they had to because they were like, well, there's a lot of stuff here that we're not getting, and the FBI did not. NARA doesn't have the authority to go to the president's house and retrieve stuff. That would be part of the FBI. That's why they had the communication. But if their goal, you said that they were talking the whole time, like they wanted to fabricate a case, why didn't they just do it on day one? Why did they wait so long?
Well, that's because the normal gap in a communication to bringing charges is about 8 months. That's not unusual at all. If NARA was talking to the Biden DOJ and going, listen, we need to get Trump. He hasn't returned the documents. Here's a great pretext. Go get him.
The pretext being that he committed a crime?
No,
That's not what pretextual means.
No, a pretext means that we are engaged in this dialogue with the Trump administration. This can now be recast as Trump refusing to return documents.
Because he did refuse. They stopped communicating. That's why when the FBI went to the Mar-a-Lago place, they found more documents. Some of those we still have never gotten back because Trump flew like 12 boxes of stuff up to his home in Bedminster or whatever.
Okay, look, I
We
think
can just say it's bad. If it's true, it's bad.
we
That's-
can keep
just
going
say
on this, but I think look, let me put it this way. I think you're a bit of
You got fucking destroyed. That's why. Dusty completely bent you over in this debate. Sweden is falling down the far right fascist hole as well. Interesting. I've been hearing that sentiment that like certain countries are definitely becoming more right wing. It's interesting. It's interesting.
You're a little pissed off that your cases didn't work, right? You were really hoping that you could get Trump, prevent him from running in 24, put the guy away and win the 2024 election. Unfortunately, he was big enough, strong enough, had enough resources, had really good lawyers.
Had a big
he beat
enough
you every
dick.
single time, up and down.
So half his
And
lawyers
so-
that he had
and
initially
so
I saw it
discarded now,
myself.
so
I
I don't
sucked
be
it
calling
every
lawyers
single
anymore.
night.
You're basically trying to relitigate in front of this poor bunch of guys and go, you know what? If only I, Steve Barnell, had been litigating this, we'd really have gotten him. But damn it, we had incompetent counsel. It all blew up in our
Well, if
face.
anybody would know anything about
Look,
relitigation,
I
it would
mean,
be the
let's talk
conservatives that
about-
constantly
why don't we
relitigate
talk-
2020
Okay,
and
look.
still don't. Do you acknowledge that, for instance, Trump lost the 2020 election?
No, he didn't lose.
Okay, so we're talking about relitigation.
Okay.
Right? I mean, like, you guys don't even accept the outcome of the 2020 election.
Okay,
We're supposed to
hold
be a beacon on a hill
Hold
of democracy.
Hold on. Well, okay, so we need to probably say a word about 2020 because apparently, just like in the opening books of the Republic, where Socrates has to say laughter, is that an argument? We're getting the sort of knowing ha 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 ha, which needs to be confronted because of its sort of sheer sneering dogmatism wedded to a bit of ignorance. So let me ask you this: and did you see my film 2000 Mules?
I watched the whole thing. Yes.
Okay, let me ask you this: do you dispute the accuracy of cell phone geo-tracking?
No.
No. If you were to be convinced that in the 2020 election, in the weeks leading up to it, and then again in the period leading up to the recall election in early Jan, that there were a number of individuals, mules, carrying ballots and going to 10 or more drop boxes, and this could be demonstrated by cell phone geo-tracking, would you agree that this is something that needs to be looked into?
Sure, and you did, and found nothing.
No. Oh, wow. Wow. Wow.
Well, okay, that's not accurate to say.
Oh
You
my
found two
God.
people that you accused of engaged in mulership. Both of those people, I think, sued you or the production company, and then that's why the film was no longer for distribution or whatever, because those two
Wow.
people were both engaged in
Okay.
fair. One guy, I think, was a father dropping off ballots for his family, and I think the other was a nurse who was dropping off ballots for the nursing home that he worked at. Both of those stories were verified to be true. I agree, 2000 Mules was an interesting hypothesis, but it was missing the part two where you actually follow through on the investigation and find the people engaged in muling for ballots. Simply
Okay.
saying that people drove by ballot
Hold
boxes
on.
and not
Okay,
have
hold
prove a
on.
crime.
Oh my God, D'Souza, your entire career just got destroyed in that one moment. I'll be honest, Destiny destroyed you. It's been a while since I heard about the conversation between 2000 Mules or whatever. I did know about the lawsuit, and I did know that he lost because he's a lying piece of shit, disingenuous, and he ruined these people's lives. So you deserved it. You're a piece of garbage, and now you're getting destroyed in a debate from a YouTuber. Love to see it. How things come full circle. Attribute to our inability to be moderate about policies whenever it's called for. Like, I'm fairly progressive myself, but even I could say a lot of what's happening now is due to our inability to compromise and make decisions not in line with whatever it was called for. Yeah, for me, that is a criticism I have on the left. We've definitely did like some things that were kind of going way too far in the left. We definitely should have compromised much, much more. The response, I'm not saying it's entirely due to the left because that's lazy, but the right, in order for them to compete capitulating to fascism is wild.
Yeah, first of all, okay, the nurse that you're talking about, I've never heard of. I don't even know what you're talking about. That's fully made up. That's out of your ass, basically. There is a case where we have in Georgia by one guy who claims, who by the way is seen in the film dropping off multiple ballots. The guy says that this was legit and he was dropping off ballots for his family, which is allowed. This case is being litigated because the facts of it are rather complex. And I won't go into it right here, also partly because it's being disputed. But
when you say litigated, in a civil manner or a criminal manner?
But the guy,
well, can you expand on that? Is it in a civil manner or in a criminal manner?
No, it's a lawsuit. It's a civil lawsuit.
Okay, so when you say civil lawsuit, who's suing who for what?
So the alleged mule is suing me and suing the company, claiming that he individually, he's not saying the cell phone geo-tracking is invalid. He's not saying anything shown in the movie is false. He's simply saying what you showed me doing in the film is lawful. And in the film, we show a guy pulling up, jumping out, dropping these ballots, and he's claiming that individual act was lawful. So that's what's being litigated.
Okay, which is important. That's the whole point,
important,
right?
Yeah.
And it could be illegal activity, right?
It could be illegal or it could be legal. That's what's being, this is being fought over. But what I'm getting at is no one is disputing the footage in the film. Some of it, you said, there was electronic surveillance. Do you realize that the people who said that this was the most secure election in history never looked at any surveillance in any state? Do you realize that many states which had surveillance turned off their videos before the election so they wouldn't have that surveillance?
That's really strange. Then I feel like Sidney Powell and the Trump admin should have probably chose some of their claims on places that didn't have surveillance, because the ones that they did, they intentionally obfuscated the surveillance cameras in order to lie about what they were showing. Like, for instance, the ballot boxes underneath the table.
Look, why don't we just stay with what... there's a
okay,
reason,
we can say with your case. In your case, it's been 4 years. Nothing has been resolved about this. It's a case about defamation. It sounds like that's what it is.
In the
it's
film
not a criminal case at all.
In the film I made, we didn't talk about boxes under the desk, okay? We relied on two types of evidence, both of which, on the face of it, are valid. First, cell phone geo-tracking, and we showed that there were indoor...
Yeah, there can be a massive counter reaction. There does need some self-reflection when it comes to the left sometimes, that I don't think happens enough at the very least. Nursing homes soon over loss of late. To her daughter, Jen Dwyer seemed agitated, restless, but since Dwyer suffers from dementia, she couldn't explain to Kathy Kaufman what was wrong. No, this is not it. I put in DeSouza, and then it just brought up a completely random person. I was trying to see if where Destiny got the nurse thing, because I haven't heard about the nurse thing either.
Georgia alone, in Fulton County, in that area, 242 mules, alleged mules, who went to 10 or more drop boxes in the period of the election. Those same people, by the way, did not go to those drop boxes any other time, because this was compared against a geo-tracking of an earlier date.
To be clear, real quick, to be clear, when you say went to those drop boxes, all you have are those people passed by those drop boxes.
No,
that's
no.
it. You don't know what they did there. You have no footage
of them
dropping
you win.
You don't know who these people
are. Wrong again.
Wait, you have footage of those people dropping ballots off at. Also, notice for the one guy that's suing you or your company or whatever, notice that you're talking about footage of him dropping ballots off at a single box. That's not even the claim. 2,000 mules is not 2,000 homing missiles to one box. It's supposed to be people dropping them off at multiple boxes. I didn't see footage of any of that, of a single person. And that would have been the strongest thing. If you could show one person, one time, visiting multiple ballot boxes, I'd be like, oh, that's pretty crazy. I didn't see a single example of that. Do you have a single example of that?
Yeah, I do.
Why didn't you show it?
It actually is shown in the movie. It is shown in the movie. What you really have is you see the same guy in two different outfits at the same box, but on two different occasions, dropping in multiple ballots.
Why would you use geo-tracking data to see a guy going through multiple ballot boxes and only look at his behavior on one ballot box when the central claim was the mule was going to multiple ballot boxes?
I'll tell you why. It's like this. It's like you have a serial killer who goes to 5 different homes, and you find 5 dead bodies in those homes. His cell phone places him at those homes at those exact times of those 5 murders. However, only one of those homes has surveillance. And in that one case, you can look at the cell phone data, you can see when he entered the home, you can then compare it against the surveillance video, but you only have one video. Now, in the 2020 election, even in the places that had surveillance, they had surveillance in approximately 1 out of 10 or fewer drop boxes. So the truth of it is, you could have a cell phone moving from Dropbox to Dropbox, but only one of those drop boxes has surveillance.
I think I would say the analogy
is all described. the analogy, this is all
The analogy is telling because you're saying there's 5 murders, but you don't even have any proof of malfeasance happening at any of these ballot boxes. Also, when you say there's not surveillance on them, you keep saying that like that's exceptional. Surveillance wouldn't even really tell you anything, right? A guy could show up in a hooded mask with everything covered and there's nothing illegal about that and drop a ballot off and you would know nothing about this person. How would surveillance even help in this case?
Well, it would help to establish that the cell phone, because the problem with the cell phone is my cell phone is moving from box to box to box. If I gave my cell phone to my wife, then she could be going from box to box, but it would be with my cell phone. The advantage of the surveillance, it can establish who is the guy who is showing up at the box. Now, look, here's the problem, okay? When you do cell phone geo-tracking, you get a cell phone ID. But the cell phone ID is not the phone number. And we have no ability, and neither do you, to take a cell phone ID and identify the person associated with that cell phone. The only people who can do that is law enforcement. And so we asked Democratic officials in Georgia, in Arizona, in Milwaukee, in Philadelphia.
So yeah, it's all the Democrats' fault, even though I have no evidence at all. But it's someone else's fault that I have no evidence. Got you.
In Detroit, to look into this. Not surprisingly, the Democrats were like, nah, we're not really interested in doing this. We're like, just talk to the mules. Maybe there is a very plausible explanation. This guy just happens to take a really long walk around election time. He likes to stop at drop boxes. He smokes a cigarette at each drop box, and that explains why he's pausing at these drop boxes. So maybe there is an explanation. We'd like to know what it is. The movie can take you as far as the film can go, but to now demand, why didn't you do the investigation? We're not able to do that, and we said so in the film. So what I'm getting at is, this is not a case where there's nothing here. There is a lot here.
There's literally, how could you even get that information?
Well, the answer is the cell phone data. You just take the cell phone data. You have a list of 2,000 or more cell phone IDs. You just get the actual phone numbers of everybody. You go visit.
No, I'm asking, how would you get the phone numbers? How would you translate this from ID to phone number to person?
That can be done very easily. That's done in every burglary and murder case in the country right now.
The burglaries have something called probable cause of a crime being committed. There's no world where law enforcement could start pulling phone numbers and data from phones off of a wild hunch where no other information is shown. Probable cause meaning that it's likely that a crime has been committed here. There's no world where a judge should be signing off on warrants or subpoenas pulling information like that.
So this is a good question. You're saying that if the prosecutor, let's just say in Fulton County, were to go to a judge and say, we have identified in Fulton County 242 individuals who in the period leading up to the 2020 election or the recall election have been identified as going directly to 10 or more drop boxes. By the way a cell phone moves is it doesn't move in a fluid pattern. It moves and stops and moves again and stops. You can actually tell when the phone paused. So we're talking about people who are stopping at the drop box. And if you go to a judge and say, we need a warrant to be able to identify these people and merely verify from them that their behavior was lawful. According to you, that warrant would be impossible to obtain because there's no probable cause. Knowing something about the law myself, I would say that warrant would be extremely easy to obtain.
What you described isn't even an illegal activity.
The election fraud is illegal. The question
No, you don't have any evidence of election fraud. You have evidence of people walking near drop boxes, which also are near post offices, which could be people mailing any number of things, right?
Let me pose a case to you. These 4 kids in Idaho are found dead. And this guy, Koberger, you see his cell phone in the vicinity of the houses, and he makes a big circle around the house, and that's the geo-tracking. He was there at the time or around the time that crime was committed. Are you saying that a single judge would go, we don't even have any evidence he did it?
No, I think you would have. I think that would be good for probable cause that a crime was committed because we have.
Dinesh just can't think beyond like a 4th grade level. The problem here is that you have no murder. You have no murder. There's no dead body. So there's no crime.
4 dead bodies. It's likely a crime committed
That's
there.
right.
We have no evidence of voter fraud from any of these mailing boxes. So there is no probable cause to speak of. Again, you didn't have evidence of a crime.
Right. But when an investigation is underway, judges are very willing to give law enforcement the tools to discover if a crime has been committed. I'll give you my own case. A very good example.
There's no crime, you dipshit. There's no crime. You haven't proven a crime. You haven't proven the fraud part. You just have proved that people were at places. There's no crime. Like DeSouza, you look smarter than you are. You're a fucking idiot.
In my own case, somebody tipped off the FBI that I made this contribution. The contribution could have been legal.
No, it couldn't have been, right?
Why? Why not?
Because it exceeded the federal election commission's.
There are
contribution limits.
actually legal ways to make a contribution. How do you think Soros gives millions of dollars? I just gave the wrong way.
Because Soros doesn't give millions of dollars to candidates or PACs. He gives them to things called super PACs, the hybrid 401 or 403 C5s or whatever, C4s or whatever, like the different organizations there, but not to a candidate directly. You give money to another person and tell them to give money to a candidate because you know that you would be bypassing the contribution limit. You're never allowed to do that.
All I'm trying to say is that a tip causes the FBI to assign $100,000 to investigate my case. And this.
So Dinesh got fucking schooled again because he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. He's lived like 60 years on this earth, has no idea how anything fucking works, and he just goes based off vibes and conjecture based.
This is normal. When law enforcement suspects that there's a crime that's been committed, they haven't proven it. They think it might be.
But there's a crime to speak of there. The exceeding of the campaign contribution limits. What you're talking about, dropping ballots off at a drop box,
Can
is
you
not
think
a
of a
crime.
good reason for somebody, let alone 242 people, to go to 10 or more drop boxes?
How many cell phones data did you go through?
Millions.
So of millions of cell phones, could 243 go by where 10 drop
Not
boxes
go by,
are?
go from one drop box
Go from
to
one
another
drop box to the
10
other.
or
Yeah,
more.
sure.
Look, we're not talking about
240. Do you understand the odds that you're talking about here of millions of cell phones where there are post offices or post drop boxes near these locations? These are all post office drop boxes, right?
Look,
Could I conceive of 240 people out of millions of cell phones dropping off stuff at drop boxes during an election season? Sure, I guess. That's a very low number of people that would have to be out of those millions of phones you pulled.
there is no reason for anyone to go to 2 drop boxes.
No reason at all. You've never in your life gone to 2 drop boxes before.
We're not talking about showing up to City Hall and turning in your ballot. We are talking about these so-called mail-in drop boxes. Look, even if I were taking the ballots of my family members, am I going to say I'll put one ballot in one box and then drive to the next box and a third box? And remember that we're setting a high burden.
Could they just be mailing stuff?
What?
Could they just be dropping off stuff to mail?
You can send in your ballot by the mail.
No, it doesn't have to be a ballot. It could be anything, right?
The mail-in drop boxes are only for ballots. They're not for anything else. They're not intended for the post mail. You're not going to put your utility bill in there. These are drop boxes set up for ballots. And what I'm saying is that it makes sense. All right, maybe by accident you went to 2 boxes, okay? You went to one and put in your ballot. You went to a second and had a smoke. Once you set the bar at 10 drop boxes, you defy credulity. There's no reason to do that. And that's why in itself, it is suspicious behavior. Now, are you saying that in all the 242 cases, am I saying that all of them were equally guilty of the same type of fraud? I don't know. But I'm saying that there's very good reason to investigate further. And if
let's say that I grant all that. Let's say that I say there's very good information to investigate these people for crimes despite having no evidence of crime being committed and no evidence of what these people were doing at the drop boxes. You don't think that there wasn't very good reason to investigate Donald Trump for committing crimes relating to the retention of classified material when he's showing classified material to people saying I could have declassified it, but I didn't?
I'm not saying that there's no good reason to investigate anything. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying.
Then the investigations of Trump were done for a good.
Again, I hate when they do. I'm not saying this obvious fucking normal statement. I'm talking about fucking Trump, you bitch. I'm talking about Trump. Based off contextual clues, do you think it makes sense to investigate Trump? Simple.
Reason.
Well, it could have been done. It could have generally when there's an investigation, there is some plausible basis for it.
Sure.
But I think
like the willful retention of classified material. Yeah.
But I think you would be naive if you're saying, oh, you know what? Had this not been Trump, but let's say had it been Bill Clinton, they would have done exactly the same thing.
What about Hillary Clinton?
Well, I'm saying Bill Clinton because he.
And I think that if Trump won the election, all this facts you have would have been meaningless because you're a bipartisan hack. You're a partisan hack who just does things because Trump says jump. So about like an hour and a half left. Do I want to watch the rest? It's already 11 o'clock. I kind of want to go to bed. I think I've watched enough. The nest sucks. That's it. Appreciate everybody who tuned in. Yeah, have a good one. Take care. Peace.